You that don't know, my name is Adam Smith. I've been living in the beach for about 10 years now, and while I do live in the South End, I do some work in the North End as well, so I do have a bit of spread across the ward. Yes, a great question, and one that's been on the minds of people, especially on Queen, for a long time. I myself was on the board of the Beach Village BIA for 6 years, so this was a constant struggle and a subject that came up over and over again. The first step, I think, is we need to gather information to really understand the economics of the problem, which also will require businesses to give a little more info. For example, we need to know how high is base rent versus property taxes versus utilities versus maintenance, and of course, how much are they paying for the BIA levy? Many businesses don't even know they pay a levy to the BIA because it's not broken down on their lease. And so we can't really understand the full picture of what exactly, not only what is the problem, but what levers we have to help businesses unless we have some of these numbers. Also, one thing, people would say, wow, lower rents, I wish rents were lower. But what a lot of people don't realize is MPAC and the way it values commercial properties. Part of the valuation of a commercial building is the income of the property, meaning the value of the lease. So a lot of building owners do not want to lower their rents because it is literally devaluing their buildings. Now, I'm not saying that, there's not something to be done there as well, but simply put, there is not really much incentive to lower rents when it means devaluing your building. Also, and this is, there should be some kind of bylaw about maintaining the facade of an empty storefront. We have bylaws about, keeping your lawn too long, your grass too long, keeping too many weeds, and yet there seems to be no way to force empty storefronts to look presentable. They'll have craft paper in the windows or newsprint and just look run down and nasty, and there ought to be a lever to force them to keep it to a bare minimum standard. In addition, I do think we need to relook at our commercial property tax rates. In particular, for our small businesses, there's residual commercial band 1 and band 2. The cutoff for band 1, which is the lower rate, is $1 million, and I think for most of our businesses on Queen, they're likely above that, and in band 2. So I think if we move that bracket a little higher, I can't say exactly what, I don't have all the numbers to make a suggestion there, but I do think if we move the cutoff for band 1 a little higher, that will give a bit of a property tax break to small businesses, and it could possibly be mandated that that property tax rate be directly translated into a reduction in rent. Lastly, and this is a big one that's really irked the BIA for a long time, and there was a lot of pushback from TPA, but parking rates. Outside of Greektown, the beach, like Queen Street in the beach, has the highest parking rates for the longest hours in all of East York, again, short of Greektown. And it is simply unfair, economically unfair. It's creating an incentive to go outside of the area. People know they want to go to a restaurant down on Queen Street. They're going to be paying $2.25 an hour, but after 6 p.m., they can hop over to Leslieville and not pay a dime. And, people will say, wow, it's not that expensive, but you know what? When you got to go do your shopping and then you want to go out to a restaurant and then you even just want to stop and pick up something at, Max Milk, you're having to pay every single time. I remember going to the hardware store and just wanting to run in and out, and that parking officer nabbed me in that 2 minutes I was in and out, and it was costing me $30. So it adds up over time. We definitely need more fair parking conditions on Queen Street. Definitely a lower minimum spend on the parking slots. I heard some great answers from our other candidates here, and I'm pretty much in agreement. It's all about more supports for low-income and vulnerable populations, including better policing of TCHC buildings that are known to be sort of crime-ridden, and that is a concern. There's also some TCHC seniors buildings that have seen certain populations shift from downtown as spots opened up, and they're not seniors, and they are a little more, again, crime prone, for lack of a better phrase. Also more youth programs. We definitely need more youth programs, things to support, teenagers and young kids, and ensure that, they have not just supports and programs that are fun and keep them busy, but to know that there are opportunities out there for them that can be, expanded upon. And lastly, and this is mostly very important with the history, the last decade of police and shootings of mentally ill people, we need more supports for mental health issues all the way. And that, I think, is one of the biggest ones. I mean, you know, the Danforth shooting was an example of a person who had mental health issues and went off. And again, we've seen shootings of guys with scissors and guys with knives who are mentally ill, either off their meds or somehow their caregiver wasn't you know, with them at the time. And so better mental health supports will definitely, I think, help with crime. Well, I should hope by now that everybody should know, I hope, that I have written a very comprehensive report on the Woodbine bike lanes and all of its issues, and detailing solutions to all of those issues. You can find it on my website. One aspect, though, not covered on my website, which is a way to relieve congestion on Woodbine, is that we should be opening up Coxwell by unifying the rush hour parking restrictions. Northbound in the evening and southbound in the morning. Coxwell could easily replace some of the volume lost on Woodbine. And lastly, about Danforth, I am fully in favor of protected bike lanes on Danforth. And yeah. So responsible development is one of my main platform planks. And what that means is development that respects the scale and character of our neighborhoods. For larger developments, include some kind of affordable units. And for developments like we're seeing at Main and Danforth, and also Eastdale and Lumsden, is that we need to start doing better coordination of new density coordinated with new mass transit. Currently, transit is packed at rush hour. Main station is packed in the morning rush hour. And if we keep jamming in more density and more density without corresponding new mass transit, we're forever going to be behind. And, you know, you'll hear people say, especially in the planning department, like, oh, you know, but it's a transportation hub at Main and Danforth, and, you know, GO is there and the subway's there and there's buses and streetcars, and that is true. But those things are already packed as it is. Where is GO RER? Where is Smart Track? The relief line is at least 20 years away. If we don't start coordinating this stuff better, we will always be sardined on the TTC. And as one example, though, too, so, you know, Main and Danforth, Eastdale and Lumsden, those are areas that are possibly getting overdense. But then there's also examples of what I consider just plain bad development, which is the Heartwood at Queen and Woodbine, the old Shell station site. Some of you may not know that the Heartwood actually violates the Queen Street East urban design guidelines. It, through a sneaky loophole that to this day I still have not got a satisfactory answer from anyone, is how the loophole was allowed to exist and how the developer knew to exploit it. But instead of setting back to maintain the views of our historical heritage fire hall, they snuck their application in this little loophole so that they are allowed to violate the urban design guidelines and go straight up 5 stories to completely block the view of the fire hall. And one of the ways we can help to prevent that is by instituting more urban design guidelines for our other major avenues, so that the limits of development are already set and in place before people put their applications in. Well, you know, I love the beach, and I've been deeply involved in community issues for a long time. And again, not just the beach either. I do Meals on Wheels in East York, north of the Danforth, every Sunday for 4 years now. I was on, as I previously mentioned, I was on the board of the Beach Village BIA for 6 years. For 8 years, I've been running the Ward 32 Transportation Committee, doing transit reports and traffic reports, and, you know, these transportation reports, they're all on my website. I'm also on the advisory board of Rain Gardens United, trying to educate people about rain gardens and get more of them installed as part of stormwater management in the city. And Ward 32 Spokes, I was co-captain for years, and that's our local cycling advocacy group. And lastly, as one last example, lighting fires in front of Q Rink in the winter for Friends of the Beach Parks. So again, interesting question. Everyone's had I think a strange or different answer for you, and unexpected. I can't say that I've had so much a worse day, but I will say that I have had a couple scary moments. And those were both some near disasters with mounted police doing crowd control in some of our events. I saw a near disaster once during the Jazz Fest where a fight broke out and a mounted officer almost attempted to go into the crowd on horseback to chase one of the fighters. But worse, one Canada Day about 3 or 4 years ago, the mounted police came out to tell everyone, okay, you know, fireworks are over, time to exit the park. And as we all know, once the main fireworks are over, that's when people start lighting off illegally, but they do it, their personal fireworks on the beach. And one of the horses got spooked and started stomping uncontrollably in a circle, not 1.5 meters away from a woman on her blanket. Children started screaming, no exaggeration here. I was there, I witnessed it. People were scooping up their kids. And so, yeah, that was kind of a scary moment, I think. And I do think we need to rethink how we use our mounted police. It's one thing to have them in parades and shows. It's another thing to have them actually, you know, interacting with crowds in a sort of enforcement manner. So, yes, but not at Kew Gardens. And the reason is, and David sort of touched on this, but I know this from being on the inside of the BIA, the actual reason why tree sales were removed from the front of Kew was that the BIA said they were not pitching in money for the renovation of Kew unless it removed Tug's monopoly, like their commercial monopoly, from the frontage of the park. And so the city's compromise said, well, if we're going to remove Tug's monopoly, we're going to not allow any vending whatsoever in the frontage of the park. So for better or for worse, we're never going to see, or at least for the foreseeable future until the end of Tug's lease, we're never going to see any vending of any kind at the front of Kew. However, Ivan Forest Gardens has a decent space that could easily replace Kew. There's the potential, I don't know anyone there, but maybe even the front of St. Aidan's or the parking lot of Value Mart, or, and it's a little out of the way and not a great solution, but who knows if RC Harris could have some possibilities there. So I am very much in favor of bringing it back. I just know that it's a non-starter if it's going to be Kew because of the complications around removing Tug's monopoly. And that would honestly, if someone was to attempt that, I know the city would refuse it simply because of the legal can of worms it would open with fighting with Tug's yet again. And, it's going to be, David really spoke to it well. It's going to be very hard to serve residents well and get face time with residents with, involvement of council and committees and all that stuff. But one of the ways I said in the original debate that I'm considering trying to deal with that is by breaking up my staff into 2 teams and have one for south of the Danforth and one for north of the Danforth. I think allowing them to focus and concentrate on the issues of each area will keep their efforts less diluted, and that their knowledge can be more intimate of each area, allowing them to specialize a little more. Lastly, I will say that I have been running a very environmental campaign. I managed to get a place to make me plastic-free buttons. There's no Mylar coating. All of my flyers are matte finish because they're 100% recycled paper, which, although it doesn't look as flashy, ironically costs more. And lastly, hopefully some of you have seen my 100% reclaimed wood lawn signs. You'll see them, they're stenciled up. It was made out of old fences and old delivery skids that I found around the ward in trash piles on the side of the road, city's right of way. And that is my way. I couldn't live with myself if I printed hundreds of plastic signs just to dispose of them 3 weeks later. So I don't have as many signs as the other candidates, but hopefully my reclaimed wood signs are making an impact. I'm going for quality over quantity. So I will